Okay, we're still populating, but for the sake of time, I think we'll go ahead and get going. We know that during these webinars, people do tend to show up as they get the technology sorted through. So just to begin, I want to welcome everybody who is on the webinar. My name is Kevin McClelland, and I am a small business development center advisor here in Silicon Valley, representing most of the West Valley, primarily Cupertino. And I'm a business owner in Cupertino and have been a business owner in Cupertino for well over 30 years now. And I'm very happy today to partner with the City of Cupertino for this webinar and the local Chamber of Commerce, the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce, to get the word out to the local businesses. We know that right now there's a lot of uncertainty. We know that there's a lot of different programs that are available, and really wanted to take some time to bring some resources into the City of Cupertino and the surrounding area to address some of the issues that are going on and to give some updates on things that are happening. So first off, I really want to thank the City of Cupertino and the Cupertino Chamber of Commerce for really helping with this partnership. You know, it really takes all of these different groups to come together to provide the resources that are available that are truly going to help you, the small business owner. And so very thankful for these relationships. And as we go forward, we're going to keep staying tuned to this space and continue to get these updates out as they come out. But for today, we're very happy to have Julie Clowes, who is the district director for the SBA. So she is the West Coast director for the SBA. So she's the boots in the ground for the area. And also today we've got Dennis King, who is the director for the Hispanic Satellite and the Silicon Valley Small Business Development Center. So once again, in Santa Clara County, especially the boots on the ground in interfacing with the SBA and helping the clients with what they need. And so we're going to be hearing from them today about the programs that available, which is the EIDL program, the emergency disaster loans, in addition to the PPP, and we're going to have some updates on those changes. So without any further ado, I'd like to go ahead and turn this over to Julie and get started. Thank you, Julie, for joining us.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you to the City of Cupertino and the Chamber of Commerce for creating this forum today so that we can share some information. I know this is a period of time when you are bombarded with so much information from so many different resources. So we appreciate the time to speak to you directly. I am going to share my screen just really quickly here to give you, I have some slides to share to help with some of the updates. As Kevin was mentioning, we've had some changes overnight. So there's been some changes into some of the programs that are available right now. So I'm going to speak to that and then also talk about what still is available today, and then looking at paths forward and things we can do as a business owner to get ready for any future funding opportunities that might be coming down the pike. And then I know Dennis and Kevin with their SBDC background can also chime in to help talk about that path forward and other options you might want to consider that are outside of SBA even. So I will start off by saying that as you may have already seen in media or any other announcements, the Paycheck Protection Program and the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program have both reached their appropriated fund limit. I think as everyone knew, the Paycheck Protection Program had been funded at $349 billion. And as of this morning, we've reached that cap. So at this time, we're no longer able to process those applications. Likewise, with the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, it has also reached its appropriated cap. What that means, though, is that for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, anybody who's already applied, we already submitted, you've got your loan number, those loans are still being processed. What we've done as of today is just stop accepting any new applications for right now. So if you are already submitted an application and received a loan number, those loans are being processed. Likewise with the Paycheck Protection Program, I've already had a lot of questions like, well, what happens? Where am I? I would really encourage you to have a conversation with your lender. Ask your lender where your application is in their internal process, because that will shed light on what potential next steps might be for you. If the bank has already gotten an SBA loan number, they should be able to move forward and close the loan and disperse the funds. So again, you I recommend you chat with your lender to see where you were in that process that's internal to the bank. But let's talk about some of the things that are still available. We do have debt deferment and relief programs that I haven't gotten a whole lot of attention, I think, so far, but I do want to let people know that they're available because I think they're all both very important programs. So if anyone out there has an existing SBA disaster loan, let's say you were a victim of one of the wildfires or flooding or some of the other natural disasters that have occurred in the last several years, SBA has automatically deferred your payments on those disaster loans through the end of the calendar year, through December 31st. Now, this should be reflected in the monthly notices you get from SBA. You didn't have to do anything proactively to trigger this. It happened automatically. One note though, one tip, if you are someone who has set up like auto payments from your account to pay these loans on a monthly basis, and you want to defer your payments, you will probably need to go into your account, whatever you're using, and stop those recurring monthly payments. That has to happen from your end. But as far as SBA's side, we are deferring those payments. The new program under the CARES Act also is this SBA debt relief program. And what this does is allows SBA to pay the principal and interest for 6 months on any current SBA debt, whether it's the 7A program, 504, or the microloan program. Similarly, it also allows us to pay interest in principal on any new debt you may acquire between now and September 27th. This program is something where SBA is working to message the banks on what they need to do. So if you have an existing debt with SBA program, S7A, 504, or microloan, I recommend you do contact your lender and let them know that you would like to take advantage of this program. And SBA is working with the lending community so that they know what they need to do behind the scenes to take advantage of this program. I also just want to point out that our Express Bridge loan program is also still available. It is loans up to $25,000 from one of SBA's designated express lenders, and I did list them on the screen there. These are the express lenders in the Greater Bay Area. These banks can provide through a streamlined process up to $25,000 of working capital. It is a streamlined process, so the goal is that they can turn this loan request around quickly to hopefully get you some immediate working capital. And then there's also some things I just want to share, maybe some lessons learned from the last couple of weeks, and I'm hoping that Dennis and Kevin will contribute to this conversation later also, but there are some things we've learned as we've kind of gone through this process. And I just want to pass along some advice or some tips, things you might want to consider if you haven't done this already, as we look forward and prepare for what we hope is some future funding opportunities. So the first thing is I would recommend, if you haven't done so already, is to prepare your 2019 tax return. Now, you don't have to necessarily file it already. We have been given extensions, but I would take this time to prepare it and at least go through the calculations and kind of know what you're going to be putting on that return. Because when we do move into new funding phases, this is a document that is very important to the lending community to help them verify the information you provide them is accurate. Another thing is to maybe take the time to really analyze and understand your business finances and expenses, especially. Take a few minutes, go through what you have, what you expending, what your needs are today and for the next couple of months. This will be unique to every business. So to the extent you haven't done this already, I do encourage you to take some time and sit down and look at what that means, what it is for you and your business. This will then help you to make quicker decisions when we see any new sources of funding and what they may be applied for. The other thing that we're seeing is this kind of caused a little bit of challenge in the first round of funding was people who maybe have commingled their business and personal accounts. So we do recommend, and it's always a great business practice, to keep your business and personal accounts separate. So now is a good time to go ahead and try to separate out those accounts to the extent you haven't done so. The other tip is to make sure you digitize important documents. This could be tax returns. This could be your internal, if you're a corporation, you have your articles of incorporation and your bylaws and things, includes your financial documents. Anything that a lender or other funder might need from you as supporting documents, if you don't already have them digitized, great to go ahead and do that so you can quickly get them out to them in the next hopeful next round of funding. And one of the big tips and lead into our next speaker, Dennis, is this is a great time to engage with a business advisor if you haven't already done so. We have, SBDC on the webinar with us today. There's other resources as well, such as our small business, SCORE, Women Business Centers, VBox. There's a range of resources out there, and all of these counseling services are free of charge to you. So you've got a lot of challenges you're going through right now as a small business owner, and I really encourage people to take advantage of having this advisor there to help you, whether it's funding issues or other issues that you're struggling with or decisions you're struggling to make. So this is a quick way of how to reach SBA. As you know, we are still open, albeit we're operating by phone and email these days, along with everybody else. We do have an intake box, a mailbox at sfomail@sba.gov. We also have our own district office website, sba.gov/ca/sf, where you can find our resource guide, to find links to the different resources that are on this slide. You can also find a list of SBA participating lenders and some other great information. And then also this is just a list of the websites and other resources that you might want to take a look at. If there is contacts on here too, if you have an SBA existing disaster loan and you have any questions, you can contact the loan servicing office that was assigned to you. It will be either Birmingham or El Paso. And then there's also just some information if you have an existing, or if you have an existing application for the Eid Alone, that I have the number there for our customer service line for the disaster program. And then I did leave the links up for the Paycheck Protection Program because now is also a good time to go in and look through that in anticipation, again, like I said, of any future funding opportunities. So with that, I'm going to kick it over to you, Dennis, or back to Kevin. I'm going to stop sharing.
Yeah, just before we do that, we are going to have a Q&A after the presentation. So if you do have a question, and some are already coming in and they're really good questions, we will get to those questions. We're going to kind of curate and go through them. But if you do have a question that pops into your mind, go ahead and include that in the Q&A, and then we'll be going through and curating those after Dennis's presentation. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dennis, and I'll go ahead and get his. You ready to go, Dennis? You've got to unmute yourself.
There we go. Ready?
Yep, all set.
Great. Well, good morning, Cupertino. I'm looking forward to our discussion. Thank you for allowing us to have this dialogue. Small Business Development Center, we partner with the Small Business Administration. Our local funding partner here in Santa Clara County is the County of Santa Clara. Next. There we go. Actually, there we go. So there are about 1,000 small business development centers across the country, which makes one of SBA's largest partners to be able to help small businesses start and grow. Until recently, we did most of our services through workshops and one-on-one advising, but we have to practice what we preach to our small businesses about pivoting. So now we're doing a lot by webinar, by email, by telephone, and by sign language. So we'll just continue to work. The basic message is that both SBA and SBDC, we're open for service for you. We partner with a lot of local organizations. our major message is that we try to provide access to information and resources to help you sustain and grow your business. Please keep this website in mind. It's ours. We try to stay current with all the information, particularly with federal loans, but other loan programs as well. We maintain this on a regular basis. A lot of the applications are on our website. Certainly the application to become an SBDC client is also available there. I should remind ourselves that all of our services, whether they be webinars, workshops, one-on-one advising, all of our services are free. Next. So you'll see that we have a dedicated section in our website for the most current news possible. And as Julie pointed out, this is news that changes all the time. So it's challenging to stay on top of it, but with our direct communications from SBA, it's been a big help to stay current. Next. We also have our own publications. This magazine is available online and in print, and it identifies a lot of the resources that we try to provide for the businesses that we serve. I'll keep moving on this. And next. So our specialty, where we really shine, is with the approximately 40 business advisors, most of whom own their own business or had owned their own business. They are conversant collectively in English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Portuguese, and other languages. So as you probably have recognized some of those faces if you've been active in your Chamber of Commerce or your local business communities. They tend to be very dynamic individuals, business owners, as I said themselves, but they're well connected to the community. What they really have in common is a passion for serving. And so it's been a joy to be able to work with them. Next. Access to capital is a particular area. We work with many banks, many credit unions, alternative lenders, and other funding sources. We do have to mention that when we do so, we represent you, our clients. We're on your side. While it's important for us to understand what financial institutions expect of you, but when we interact with them, we're there to represent you. Traditionally, we've worked with helping facilitate loan requests, as I said, both traditionally and with alternative sources. What I was hoping today was to walk you through the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program and the Payroll Protection Program. But as Julie announced, they've been currently maxed out. Our hope and our expectation is Congress will see the wisdom of continuing to invest in the small businesses of the nation to keep the economy going. So I fully expect that sometime soon we'll hear a refurbishment of those loan programs. But from our own experience, the business advisors that you just saw, in the last 2 weeks, we, beyond sending the messages to thousands of small businesses here in Santa Clara County, we walked over 400 small businesses through that loan process. And in the last couple of days, we've been hearing reports from our clients that they are now starting to get those loans, representing now more than $2 million. And that's just the beginning. So we're looking forward to be able to share more success stories as time goes on.
How much does the SBDC cost for the business owner to utilize those services?
All of our services, Kevin, are free for one-on-one advising, for the loan packaging, and a wide variety of other services that we provide. So they're free. I think we can skip this one for today, except for one point, is that while these loan programs are maxed out, if you notice the Express Bridge Loan package, that's still available. There are other programs that SBA has. Julie did a good job describing those. SBA is still open, so let's not give up on that. Please. Next. We'll skip ahead. Next. Again, we'll skip over these things. I think let's keep going. Let's keep going. I guess this is the message that we were sharing before that seems more true than any time, is that Certainly the biggest challenge for small businesses is the constant change and the confusion that's out there. And so more than ever is the time that you should have a relationship with, certainly with your local Chamber of Commerce, to stay on top of what's happening locally, to stay in touch with us, business advisors, that we can keep you apprised when opportunities take place. We also have to warn you is that unfortunately in times of crises, there are still exploiters out there. So you have to be careful of people who are willing for a small fee to try to get you in front of the line or try to provide some of these services. SBA services are free. SBDC services are free. You should not be charged for any of this. And if you get a call or a solicitation, I would be very wary. Please keep going. Next. So the final one, Kevin, I wanted to share that there are other resources. Next, Kevin. I wanted to be able to share other things. The state of California has a $50 million program for small businesses that is going to be channeled through the iBank. We are trying to stay in touch with them through GoBiz of the state of California. Actually, you kind of jumped ahead, Kevin.
Did you still need that slide?
I wanted them to see it, please. Thank you. What I'm inviting you to do is to sign up, become an SBDC client. We don't charge for our services. We'd like to be able to keep you up to date on these various programs. The state of California's program is not currently open, but it could be by the time that we're through talking. It could be today, tomorrow, anytime soon. There are a number of local communities that are stepping up with their own loan and grant programs. I was going to rattle off some names, but that's changing on a day-by-day basis also, and we'll try to keep that posted on our website. So please take advantage of this website that you see in front of you. Sign up to be a client. Allow us to work with you to be able to direct you to the resources that can help you right now and for the long term. If there's any one message, I think it's equally true for SBA as it is for the Chamber of Commerce, as it is for us, is that we're here for you. So we are rooting for your success, and we'd like to do whatever we can to help you get there. Thank you, Kevin.
Great. Well, thank you, both of you, for that updated information. And yeah, the curiosity is going to be is how quickly the other loans that have been unavailable because of the bandwidth required by the EIDL and the PPP, how quickly those come back. But additionally, there's probably a lot of questions and concerns around, how soon we're going to get the additional funding. I don't think any of us quite know that, right?
No, but I think, Kevin, I think Julie was right on target when she said during this lull, now is the time to get ready. I mean, if there's any lesson that we've learned, don't wait. So be prepared. So when the opportunity presents itself, move on it rather quickly. That's not the time to begin gathering your financial documents. You should be doing that now.
Well, and I appreciate the message because, one of the most important pieces of this webinar is to really explain that it really is that partnership between the city, the Chamber of Commerce, the SBA, and the SBDC, in this case, the Hispanic Satellite and the Silicon Valley Small Business Development Center, to be the resources. If your accountant is going to help you with the paperwork, pay him to do that. But if you're one of those people that doesn't have a lot of resources and you need some help, there's so much information out there. And I'm going to have Angela put in, the city additionally, and the chamber also have updates. So I think between those four websites of the city website, the chamber website, the SBA, and the Silicon Valley SBDC, there's going to be some real accurate and pertinent information. I think it was mentioned that the information changes virtually daily right now, sometimes by the hour. And so the websites may not reflect what just happened, but there are lots of people that are working to keep those sites up to date. Julie, did you want to make another comment before we get into the Q&A?
No, I think Yeah, thank you to both of you. And I think that comment is spot on. It's just, we don't know, we could speculate all we want, but none of us know what the next round of funding might look like. So rather than try to speculate, as I said, I think this is a great opportunity to get prepared. I think, the first wave of everything from healthcare issues to the business issues hit so fast that a lot of us didn't have the time to really prepare. And expecting we'll maybe have a couple days here, now is a time to really try to prepare. And to the extent you haven't engaged with any of our business advisors, I do think it's a great time to do that, because not only do you have the funding questions, but you might have some other business issues or questions too. And I just think in general, having a business advisor you can bounce your ideas off of or help you strategize is just a great opportunity.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because one of the other things that we don't talk about as we're talking about the loans and other funding is trying to get these business owners reconnected with their passion. One of the things that I'm seeing with the clients that I'm working with is that they're a little depressed about the current environment, and for a lot of them, just getting them to reconnect with that passion of why they went into business, why they love their business, and why they're doing it is always a good jumpstart. And then as we start to get back to work, how to engage their employees to help get that message out there. Because I think that small business owners have such a message with their passion. And I think that the more that we can get those stories out there and get those communicated, that the better it's going to be for the local community to help embrace and get those businesses jump-started again.
Mm-hmm.
There are some questions here, and some of them may be more technical than we can get into. And if we need to defer them, we will. I think I did mention that Angela's going to be putting in the city website in the Q&A also, so that's going to be available for people to have that link available. But one of the questions here from Ted Kim says, the PPP loan forgiveness, if they're unable to hit the 75% payroll threshold, are we able to increase salaries or offer bonuses to the staff to get to the requirement?
And so there's still some of that really detailed guidance on the forgiveness piece that we're waiting for as well. The intent behind it was to help you maintain your payroll and or bring people back if you had to lay them off or let them go for any reason. So the math is really looking at what you spent last year on all the things that fit into the payroll cost bucket, divide that by 12 to get your monthly, and then multiply that by 2.5 to get your allocation, and then take 75% of that to payroll costs. So one of the things is not necessarily looking to say, okay, Susie Smith was on my payroll last year, Susie Smith is still on my payroll this year. It is, there was an FTE that I paid last year that I'm continuing to pay at least the same level. So the question about, can you increase and have that count to forgiveness? I hate to say yes when I'm still waiting for some of the guidance to kind of really be clear, crystal clear on some of these really specific questions. So that's something I would say, that's why I put the PPP website information up there, because every day they continue to add and address a lot of these really specific questions through the interim rules and through the FAQ guidance.
And I do think that there's going to be some additional guidance on that. I agree with Julie, because of the fact that, one of the things that's been brought up in a lot of examples, and I think that the elected officials have been listening to it, is if your business, like a restaurant, restarts, and because of the social distancing, you now have a half or a third of your capacity, there may be the unfortunate chance that because you have fewer tables, that you don't need as many waiters or as many cooks. And so, without you wanting to affect it, just the sheer numbers are going to dictate that you are going to need to reduce your staff. What happens then? Does it automatically penalize those businesses that are still trying to survive? And so I think there's going to be some additional guidance out there. But yeah, as Julie said, the case, it is, you want to go with the strictest letter of the law at this point until we do get some of the nuanced explanations out there. One of the things that Andy Huang brings up is, what if I do not have a banking relationship with a normal bank? It says that he uses a stock brokerage account for free to save bank dollars a month. How do you apply for PPP? And I think that one of the things that I'd say is if you have a relationship with Intuit because you use QuickBooks or PayPal, they came online. Once again, it's not available now, but as it, when it does come back, you may want to use one of those alternatives that you have a relationship with. Julie, do you have other people as well?
Sure. I mean, one of the things SBA was doing was onboarding new banks and a lot of credit unions as well for purposes of offering the PPP loan. So those, you're not restricted to who you engage with. You can approach any lending institution that is authorized by SBA to offer a PPP. So I think that, now as there's, potentially this pause, we'll be able, those banks and those new ones too are going to be able to kind of catch up, and we'll be in a better place, hopefully, to talk about what lenders are available out there if and when the new round of funding comes available. So there'll be options and choices. Sometimes
those economic shortcuts might cause more difficulty in the future. And you can see that particularly on your tax records. So if you pay your taxes with the spirit of keeping the taxes low as possible by minimizing profit, that also has a message to your lending institutions about whether you can pay back a loan. So now is probably a really good time to have some soul searching with yourself and looking at your own practice. If you're saving a few pennies by not using a traditional lender, you may want to revisit that. It's not too late to start developing a good working relationship with a funding institution that you can trust. There are nonprofits like credit unions that are also out there. So now is a good time to do your homework.
Another question we have is for the SBA Economic Injury Disaster Loan, the $10,000 emergency grant. Did one have to apply for the EIDL in order to be considered for the $10,000 loan advance emergency grant?
So the EIDL advance of up to $10,000 was a new enhancement, I'll say, as a result of the CARES Act to the existing program. So in order to apply for the EIDL advance, you needed to use our online application that was retooled and streamlined and posted on March 30th. So when you were in that application, it was one application for both programs, so you could check the box to be considered for EIDL advance. So you did follow the same process to apply for both. But if you only wanted the EIDL advance, that's okay. You could accept that amount of money as it is offered to you, and then you can always decline whatever other funding might be made available to you through the EIDL program.
Good. Another one that's interesting in the questions is, it says I own a small business for 4 years but have no business account, only have personal banking accounts and have been doing financing through personal accounts, but it evidently disqualified them for applying for the PPP. They think it's unfair and wondering if there's a way the SBA can change this before the 2020 business account requirement.
So I will say that that's not a factor in our SBA loan programs. That's something that the banks, I think, were looking for and some of their internal policy decisions. So that's not something that we imposed upon the lending community. I think, and Dennis and Kevin, if you want to weigh in, I know we've always encouraged people to keep their accounts and their finances separate, just as a good practice for business, but I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Actually, I probably would have said just that. If you had gone to any of our Business 101 trainings, we would strongly encourage you to make a distinction between your personal income and your business income, and whatever financial relationships that you've got. Just for your own tax purposes, for your protection, for so many reasons, you really should have two buckets. And the more that you can keep them apart, the better that you'll be able to work in the future.
Yeah, and that is it. The hope for any small business is that you're going to grow. And the more that you have those intertangled and intertwined, the harder it is for the business. Even if you're a sole proprietor, being able to have those separate buckets allows you, as you want to perhaps incorporate or even expand in other ways, to already have those buckets separated in order to have that distinction of what that impact's going to be and what, really what the difference is between your financing stuff. So I think that's That's very well said.
Yeah, you certainly don't want your business income to be taxed as a personal income. So for so many reasons, you really want to keep them separate. Better for tracking, better for leveraging for other resources in the future.
Another attendee, acknowledges that the Paycheck Protection Program for small businesses is already out of money. The questions they have are: does this mean we can no longer submit an application with our bank / loan providers to apply for the PPP? And I believe the answer to that is yes, right? I mean, they're not accepting loans at this time, correct?
Right, you'd have to ask the bank. I can just speak from the SBA side. We're legally not allowed to accept any applications and just queue them up even, because we don't have appropriated funds to support that right now. So we have to wait until we have more appropriated funds before we can, even start a queue again. But I don't want to speak for the bank's behalf, but I can just speak for what SBA has to do under the law.
And then their second question in regards to this was explaining how the funds are distributed from the government to the lenders and then to the small business.
So this, for PPP, it's a government guaranteed loan program. So what that means is that the bank is actually making the loan. So the initial disbursement of any funds is actually the bank's money. In this particular case, what SBA has done is offer 100% guarantee to the bank, which is something I don't think we've ever done before. And then we also have this forgiveness piece. So remember, the first iteration is the bank agreeing to make the loan and dispersing funds from its resources. When it comes to the forgiveness piece, more detailed guidance is forthcoming. There's a little bit already out in the rules, but basically the borrower is going to need to come to the bank and say, okay, here's how I used the money. I was in accordance with the rules, the 75-25 split, and I would like my loan to be forgiven. Then the bank will come to SBA, and SBA, they'll have that engagement, and the bank will be, it would be reimbursed, or, some of those details have not been finalized yet as how the transaction is going to mechanically happen, but that'll happen between SBA and the bank.
If I can add, the advance that was going for the economic injury loans, the process for that is that you identified your financial institution when you applied, and that advance would be deposited directly to your bank. There's a reasonable chance that if you applied a couple of weeks ago, you may have already gotten it and it's sitting in your bank account. They don't necessarily notify you that that you've got it. So you might want to check your account.
That's a good point. The third and final question from this attendee is, do you expect additional PPP funds to become available in the coming months?
We can't speculate on what Congress may do. I think we're all very hopeful.
Yes.
So I think we're all hopeful.
And I personally am counting on the wisdom of Congress to see that investing in small businesses is an investment that pays back in multiple ways. And hopefully they'll see the need and the urgency to do it quickly. But Julie's right. Nobody can predict Congress.
Now, this is an interesting question. It says, we started an online application. Should we still move forward in contacting our bank to complete the PPP process? I guess the question that I would have is that if they started it, did they not finish it? But if they did finish it, then they should contact their bank if they haven't heard.
I would definitely say contact your bank, because I don't know what the internal bank policy or process is going to be right now at this point. So they're best off contacting their bank.
Well, and then, the question is are any processing loans quicker than others? And I think we can safely say that, I guess that is an actual valid question, because even it's not about the application, it's about banks processing. Have we heard that anybody's processing better than others?
Honestly, everything moves so fast as I didn't really have time to compare results. But the banks do have the ability to dictate their own internal processing when it comes to the loan approval. So that's always a great question to ask on the front end, just so you as the borrower understand what process your loan application is going to go through. And then maybe you can kind of benchmark, how long it might take. There was, as part of the PPP program in the interim final rule, the goal for banks to disperse funds within 10 days of closing the loan. So the real question is how long from application to the closing process. And some of that depends on how much information, how complete the information was that the borrower submitted at the beginning. And if the bank has all the information from day one, they can probably process it faster than if they have to go back and ask questions or ask for, say, oh, you didn't submit your tax returns, or oh, I need this. And there's that back and forth trying to get more information. So things on the front end. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dennis.
I was going to say, I think another lesson for this, all banks, all credit unions are not the same. So do your homework, try to develop a relationship that works for you. They're different. So it's worth an investment of your time to develop that relationship.
And I don't have anything to add other than the clients that I've been working with, the smaller and the local banks have been much quicker to fund. I've heard from my ones that are with the larger banks that we're still trying to get a call in to find out kind of what's going on. But once again, that's just my experience, and it may not be indicative of the current environment. So it says, is there a waiting list for iBank loan information? I don't see further directions on the statewide site.
I know there is a link, but I'm trying to remember what that link said off the top of my head. I don't remember if it was to get, more information pushed to you when it opens and becomes available. I think I would just refer you back to the site because I can't remember what exactly it said. It was business.ca.gov/coronavirus. Should take you to the iBank program information.
Many of those links, by the way, are on our website.
Perfect.
There you go. Another good reference to that. I said I sent all the required documents through B of A for the EIDL and the PPP almost 2 weeks ago. Yesterday I got an email, but it would not let me log in and answer any other questions they had. I finally heard back last night from the bank officer, and the answer was they are having issues and to keep trying. Then I find out they have closed this. Does this mean I'm totally out? It has been more than challenging to try to get a hold of the bank officer. I'll do the first iteration saying that this was kind of my experience. The larger banks seem to have a lot more issues, but I don't know about yours specifically. What do you guys have to say on that one?
Yeah, there's nothing that I would be able to personally see or discover on that. Unfortunately, you'd have to keep trying to reach, a Bank of America representative through whatever channels they've provided, whether it's phone, email. I'm not sure. Hopefully they have a dedicated. I think a lot of banks set up some dedicated phone lines and email boxes and intake boxes. So if they have that, I would say just keep trying to reach someone through those channels.
We certainly have heard a lot of stories as we interact with clients. I'm not publicly going to be pointing fingers, but what I strongly recommend, learn from this. Learn how your bank is treating you. Learn, understand how did they respond to this crisis. This has been this crisis continues to be a test of relationships as well as our ability to perform. So if you can just take a deep breath, let's see what relationships work for you. If they didn't, well, then maybe you need to explore relationships that can work for you.
No, I think that's a huge message of what we're talking about today. And just the fact that we're having this webinar with all of us here in conjunction with the City of Cupertino, the Chamber of Commerce, and even other local cities in our community here, that it just really speaks to the fact that these relationships are super important. And I couldn't be more thankful at this time of crisis that we all can come together like this, even on short notice, to come together and get this information out. So even in that regard, I think that Dennis, your words speak well, and I think that there's going to be a lot of challenges with banks and with other relationships, and I think that the ones that work will become pretty evident. This one's interesting. It says that they were waiting a long time for Wells Fargo to open up their PPP application. While they were waiting, they found out PayPal was accepting applications, so they applied there. The next day, Wells Fargo let us know that they could apply at Wells Fargo, and now they're trying to decide if they should stop the PayPal app and apply at Wells Fargo. And I guess based on today's information, we should say that they should not do that, that they should stick with the application that's completed, because they probably can't complete one now at Wells Fargo. Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, go ahead, Dennis.
I was going to say, if they've got an application in process now, I mean, in the system, on its way to SBA, this is not a time to stop. But obviously, in terms of trying to initiate something new, that's kind of academic right now.
Yeah, I would try to clarify with if PayPal was the first group that you applied through, I'd try to see if you can get a status check to see where it is in the process, and that should inform your decision.
Yes.
This next attendee has 4 really good questions. The first one is, if our workers are shelter in place, how do we utilize the money in 60 days?
If they're shelter in place, you can still pay them.
Well, and also there's also a window, right? There's a window for the 60 days. It's not just the next 60 days.
Right. It's a sliding, and Julie, you can correct me, but it can be retroactive to February 15 and can go all the way up to June 20th. So,
well, it is clear in the rule that the 8-week period of funding starts the 8 weeks post disbursement from the lender. But how long you have to bring employees back, because you wouldn't apply for any forgiveness purposes until obviously after you've expended the funds, because you'll need to show the lender that you did use the money in accordance with the program's intent. So there is that window to bring back people if you've had to let them go. Or it is just the opportunity to keep paying people that have been on your payroll, and this is 8 weeks of additional financing to support those payroll. How you choose to use those workers is your decision. It's just a matter of them being on payroll.
Second question is that they applied for the EIDL loan and haven't heard anything back. How do they check?
So as of right now, you'll notice if you go into the website, there isn't a dashboard or anything for you to log into to check. You can try the customer service line. Unfortunately, on the district level, we don't have access to that system, so we can't run those checks personally. I do fully understand and recognize the frustration that this causes, and I wish I had a magic wand to look at everyone's status for them. But as of right now, I would say try the customer service desk, the 800 number, or the email version, and see if they're able to pull that information for you.
Good. This next one's probably a little more technical than we're going to get into here, but I still wanted to bring it up because I think that it's one that may appeal to the greater audience. And that's, does the owner's payroll count does the owner count as part of the payroll for total payroll, and how do they calculate the FTEs?
They do, and depending on how you're organized as a business, there's different ways that can count. So again, I would refer them back to the interim final rule, because there's the original rule that was put out, and then we've in a sense expanded upon it, if you will. So as of my days are blurring, I think 2 days ago, we put out rules more specifically on self-employed or sole proprietorship. So there are examples of calculations in the original rule, and then the updated rule to reflect the sole proprietor. So depending on how you're organized and what your exact situation is, you might find looking at those sample calculations helpful to see how you include all the different numbers, whether it's yourself and your employees, if you have employees.
Good. That was very well explained. I thought we were going to get in the weeds on that one. You did great on that one, Julie. This one is interesting. For PPP, what happens to a new business that was incorporated in December of 2018, but first payroll didn't start until the end of March 2020? Based on the PPP application form, we should use the average of January and February 2020 payroll for average monthly payroll for a new business. Obviously, they are not able to do that because they're in a unique situation. Any thoughts?
I will encourage people that, remember, the payroll protection plan is very narrowly focused and targeted on maintaining your current payroll or bringing employees back. And so that might not be the situation that every business is in. So one thing I would say is sit down and look at what expenses you actually had, and what do you need to, what expenses do you need to pay now and then for the next couple of months. And maybe there is a different program that could be better aligned. If the EIDL program gets additional funding, that might be a program that is better suited in your specific situation, because you can pay payroll costs with that, but you can also cover other expenses. So I would say that even though PPP has gotten a lot of publicity and a lot of press, it's not the only program in town. And I think the first thing to do as a business owner is to figure out which of these tools might be best suited for my specific business needs. So, and then which, qualify for it based on eligibility.
That's very well said. No, I think you make very good points there. Dennis, did you want to add anything to that?
No, she covered it very well.
Yeah, no, I thought that was great. This one says that I'm an independent contractor without employees. How does the forgiveness 75% formula work on PPP?
I will direct you to the rule that came out within the last 48 hours because it addresses that specific situation. If you look at it, and it shows you the calculations for the sole proprietors and for the self-employed. It is a slightly different calculation than they're using for businesses like a C Corp or anybody who's under another form of business. So I do encourage you to go through it. There is a simple calculation of what counts for your payroll in your situation. And then there's a slightly different calculation for how you do the forgiveness piece. And you can read the full rule, but one of the reasons why the calculation is slightly different is because we anticipate a lot of these self-employed and independent contractors aren't necessarily going to have the same types of overhead costs, rent and utilities necessarily as a regular business might have that, got a storefront or some other thing. So the calculation is slightly different only because it's meant to try to help you given your situation as a self-employed individual. So I'm not trying to pass the buck, but the rule lays it out much better than I could probably try to do it from memory right now.
Good. This next one is interesting. It says I've worked myself. I worked myself at my small business with 1 or 2 payroll workers. They've never been on payroll, but worked as an owner manager. How can I be considered for COVID-19 impact on small business benefits?
Right. What's the situation is
so basically they're not taking a salary.
Okay.
They're the owner manager, so they probably take share of whatever the profits are. But at this point, they probably need, they don't have any of that. So they're wondering how they can actually be considered the owner manager and if there's a way to receive some of the benefits or be a part of the benefits.
Right. For the PPP program, I always tell people to really read the definition of payroll costs because while, if you have W-2 employees, that makes it really easy. But it also talks about, it's W-2, it's salary, it's commissions, it's net income as potential or net earnings from self-employment. So there are other things that count in this, payroll bucket. So I do encourage people to read through that and see what applies to you and how you're organized and how you report on your taxes and what you report. And then you can take that information because there are sample calculations in the rule for the scenario where it is an owner who doesn't have a salary per se, but has maybe a couple employees that get some sort of salary, and how you make that calculation work.
Good. Now, this is an interesting question. How does the business demonstrate that the business was affected by the coronavirus, and what factors should be considered?
I guess it depends on what program they're speaking to, because remember, for the economic injury disaster program, it is, you have to be economically injured
Right.
as a result of COVID-19. So if you suffered any sort of business loss, it's a very low bar in this situation. I think it's pretty easy to demonstrate, especially if you're in a community where there was, the essential and non-essential businesses, and you maybe were deemed non-essential and were forced to close for a period of time. So, that certainly impacted your revenue. I mean, your revenue may have gone to zero or has been extremely diminished. So, that it's as simple as that when it comes to the economic injury disaster program. For PPP, remember, that's focusing more on payroll and the payroll effects and your number of employees, last year versus this year, and your conditions. So to my knowledge, there's no separate criteria that says you need to demonstrate, financial losses in your revenue, because remember, it's more focused on your payroll situation.
Yeah, and in the disaster loan process, one of the forms does just that, where you track your sales backwards to show that impact, and so that's one of the ways that
for the EIDL program, right? So it's in this particular situation with the pandemic. I mean, it's affecting everybody across the country, so it's a pretty low, it's pretty easy justification in this circumstance, I think, and that's not something I would worry about necessarily.
This next one is interesting, and I don't know if we can get into it very much, but they were basically saying that they worked with Citibank, and Citibank never opened for the PPP application. And once again, they weren't able to work with other institutions. And so I guess their question is, any suggestions on how to proceed for the next round if and when it becomes available, is really the valid question out of that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think there's a lot of unknowns right now, but one of the things that I would say is to maybe start exploring some other potential lenders. A lot of them set up or put information on their websites, because we're all engaged in, good social distancing practices right now. So the banks are making a lot of available information available via their website. I would read to see what they're saying, how they're messaging, and to see if they're taking new customers for this purpose. I think right now it's difficult to know that, because we don't know what the future of the PPP program will be, if additional funding will be allocated, appropriated. But we also have a layer that we haven't talked about here is the Fed last week came out and announced this Main Street program, where they're going to make loans and other resources available, especially for some community lenders who maybe don't have as many internal bank assets and resources to lend against. So I think that's potentially could factor into what banks are able to do moving forward if they have more internal resources to draw upon to lend against. So I think there's a lot of moving parts right now, which doesn't make it easy to answer your question. But I would say, keep doing your homework, be persistent, stay on top of some of these bank websites to see what they're messaging and what they're offering to the public. They might not have any concrete messaging until they know with certainty that more money will be made available through the PPP program. But right now, I'd just stay a little diligent and try to, if you've identified a handful of banks you might potentially want to work with, just keep watching their website for their information.
This may be an unfair observation, but in normal days, quote unquote, when it comes time to getting a loan from a bank wants to be able to predict your behavior in the future, because they want their loans paid back. You take that as a given. How do you predict the future? Well, you look at the past. You look at the past track record. And so you're in an opportunity time now, a lull between the craziness of these loan programs, to do your homework, to look at what these institutions, how have they responded? And now is the time to get ready for the future. The other lesson, obviously, is do your homework now. Don't wait. Don't wait until the door is open to begin that process of getting ready. You need to be ready as promptly as you can.
And I would just add what we said earlier, that, there are other relationships that have come out. I thought it was really great that Intuit, PayPal, and Square were all coming online to assist with that. And, a lot of small business owners have their cashiering through Square, or use QuickBooks for their payroll or their business expenses, or receive funds and payments through PayPal. And so, utilizing those relationships may be another layer, in addition.
Yeah, to be fair to them and to be fair to so many banks, many of them were caught off guard. I mean, this all happened in just the last, 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
It takes them a while to get their act together. Okay. So to give them a little bit of patience to be able to say, okay, especially those that came on at the end, well, now they should have their act together. So they shouldn't have that same kind of lull as soon as the gates open up again.
I found a really interesting, factoid, if you will, to help illustrate the magnitude of the PPP program. So for SBA, we did 14 years worth of lending in 14 days.
Yeah.
So
that's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, clearly we're at an unprecedented time, and I was really happy that they were able to use the banks, because I think that was, the SBA had already took on a big chunk with the EIDL loans, and so I think that figuring out to use the channels through the local small business lenders was a great idea. But I do think that for all the groups, as Dennis said, it was a huge challenge. But I do think that people are getting up to speed. I think everybody's getting up to speed as best they can, as quickly as they can at some level.
If I can even localize what Julie said, I mean, our SBDC program for here in Santa Clara County normally does between 500 and 600 businesses a year that we work with. Well, in the last 2 weeks, we worked with over 400 in just 2 weeks. So it really did catch a lot of people off guard. It was very intensive. We're ramped up to keep it going, and so we certainly want to keep going. But it's good to kind of take these things into consideration.
Yeah. And, we as an agency had to learn to scale very quickly and leverage every available resource channel, we could tap into. And I think definitely a lot of lessons learned. And so as we move forward and look at, what we hope will be additional funding opportunities in the future, that, hopefully we've learned a little bit. We're in a better place, hopefully, to execute. And I think we're hopeful that we'll be able to continue to support the small businesses in the way that we know you guys need that support right now.
Mm-hmm.
The next question says, is the disaster loan application process strictly through the SBA website, unlike the PPP loan process, which is only through authorized banks and financial institutions?
Yes, that is the distinction that was between the programs. That the EIDL program was a direct loan, or is a direct loan from SBA. So you do need to apply directly with SBA. There's no third party involved in that transaction. The PPP program, on the other hand, is offered exclusively through our participating lenders. So it is a government guaranteed loan. So we need the lender there to make the loan, and then SBA is on the back end with the guarantee, and with this one, the forgiveness portion.
Good. A good question. How do you apply for a bridge loan through SBA?
So it is a guaranteed loan program through our express lenders. I had them listed on the slide. I'm happy to share out my PowerPoint. So if you guys want to distribute it to the participants for today, happy to do that. Likewise, we list who those express banks are, the express lenders are, in our resource guide. It's on our website as well.
And of course, that's what we, SBDC, helps locally quite a bit. So I would encourage you to go back to our website, sign up, ask for assistance. One of our people should get back to you very quickly.
One individual says that they applied for both of the programs over the last few weeks, and they don't know any of their restaurant hospitality colleagues that have received the funds or the 10,000.
It is moving. I know that. I'm hearing from businesses every day that have received their funding from one or other program. So I know when you're not in that initial tranche of getting funds, it's not happening fast enough, but it is definitely happening. And again, as I think it was Dennis that pointed out that the EIDL advance, that up to $10,000 portion, is being directly deposited into the account that you designated on the application form. So if for any reason you're not, checking your account on a regular basis, I do encourage you to do so, because it likely might just show up. But for the actual EIDL loan, you will get an email with a link to go access your closing documents for that. So again, the other advice is that whatever email address you used on your application, please be checking that regularly. You might even want to check your spam filter occasionally, just in an abundance of caution, to make sure the email didn't get caught up in that for any reason.
And that was another one. Go ahead, Dennis.
And with our clients here in Santa Clara County, they're starting to pop now. So just in the last few days, we have seen over $2 million of loans being granted. And that's just the beginning of them popping. So now is the time that they should be seeing success around.
Yeah, I'm hearing that from, one of the things that, we do is we're on with other colleagues throughout the state of California. And that's kind of been what I've been hearing from everyone as well, that a lot of money has really started to come through and get funded. And so that's been great to hear. The next question was an individual that sent the application through snail mail. And they were wondering if SBA had sent all the emails already with a loan processing number. And I guess your question is that they would just need I don't know if snail mail is being handled separately. So I guess that would be the question.
Yeah. So if I guess I'm presuming they might not have a loan number yet in this situation.
It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like they printed the documents and then sent them through regular mail.
They can always send us an email, and we can try to check into that specific case for you.
Okay. There's one that's very politically active, and I appreciate the activity, but I don't know that we can answer or engage on that one. One of the questions is, can you apply to more than one institution at the same time?
I'm presuming they mean for the PPP loan.
Right. Yes, since there's only one avenue for.
I don't know, Kevin. You don't have a lending background, do you? I think the lending community probably doesn't encourage this practice, but I mean, you need to make whatever business decisions are right for you. I would ask that if you do engage in that practice, that the minute you get a response back, an approval back from one institution, that you promptly notify the others that you'd like to cancel your application, just so, out of respect for all the other people who are applying for the program, to kind of open up the pipeline for others.
I think so. Yeah, very diplomatic. I think Julia offered a very diplomatic answer in terms of being able to do with more than one relationship at a time. I think the financial institutions will say you can only have one spouse at a time. So, financial institutions do become aware if you're applying for the same loan for more than one place. So be sensitive to that.
Yeah, and I guess the concern would be that, at some point you'd have to determine which one you were going to take, and that might slow down your process or even halt it. So I don't know if it's just from a nuts and bolts practicality, because at some point people are going to say, well, which one is it going to be funded through? And that's going to stop the process if it gets that far. So there's a lot of people that haven't heard back, and I guess the guidance is overall that if they hadn't heard back from the disaster loan process, that they should try to call. And the same thing kind of with the banks. Is that the basic guidance?
I mean, for the economic injury disaster loan program, I would say just, this is not what anybody wants to hear. I realize that, but I would just say, please, money is flowing. I would say just please wait. You can try reaching out to the customer service center, but the most they might be able to tell you is that the loan is in process, because I know they're actively working on processing these loans and getting them out the door and getting people funded as quickly as possible. So that is definitely happening. The PPP program, again, I would say check with your lender to see where your specific application is in the process with them internally.
I would add one step. One of Julie's colleagues had recommended that, first of all, if they're applying for the economic disaster loan, they should have an application number already. Mm-hmm. And if the application number starts with a 3, they should probably hang in there. It's in progress, right? If it's some other number, it's probably not.
Yeah, with the ones with the 3 are the designation of people who were applied when the EIDL Advance program became available. So that wasn't authorized until the CARES Act passed. So from basically March 30th onward. So that queue is moving forward, and those are definitely being processed. And like I said, there's sometimes for the EIDL Advance, the money is just showing up in your account. So definitely, I know those are moving forward. That's all I can say. But if you want to try to check, the only resource I can offer you right now really is the Disaster Customer Service Center.
One interesting question. The parent company is overseas. Is the company eligible for applying for both these programs, the PPP and the Eid Alone?
So I know that foreign or a portion of foreign ownership is not an absolute prohibition, but there's a lot of other factors that go into it. One of it is our rules on affiliation, for example. Those still apply to the program. So, we'd really have to look at that person's or that business's specific situation to be able to say that it looks like it could be eligible or not eligible. So it's actually a much more complicated question than it might appear.
Yeah, and one of the things I've seen is this gentleman says that he has an after-school program and they lost all their students but still need to pay a high rent. What can they do?
Well, one of the things, if you haven't talked to your landlord, I would definitely recommend you speak with your landlord to see if you can come to any sort of agreement, outside of the loan financing programs. But that would be the first thing I would do. And the second thing, if you need it for rent, I might look some other sources of funding, maybe the iBank program, which will hopefully be opened up, like that's at any minute now. And then if I don't know, we haven't talked about it, so I don't know if there's any local funds in Cupertino in Santa Clara, there are some funds, right?
Yeah, I know that Santa Clara is, and that's one of the questions that people have. And I don't know if Angela wants to weigh in, because I don't know if something's going through the process of the city of Cupertino right now. But the question is just that: is Cupertino considering establishing a small business assisting grant program similar to the one in the city of Santa Clara? And that one I don't know and haven't heard. But I'm sure at some point our city council will consider it if it isn't already in the pipeline. I've got to assume that a lot of local cities, especially in this area, look at what the others are doing and try to model things to be of similar assistance. Then it says, can you provide a link to the SBA guidance for independent contractors?
Mm-hmm. It's if we go back to the slide deck, it is the simplest way is just go to sba.gov and follow there's a big box, coronavirus, support, click through there and click to the funding option for Paycheck Protection Program, and all of the rules and the updates are posted there. So it's.
Yeah, this one is a single, they have a single person S-Corp owner employee doing consulting work by themselves and paying themselves on W-2. The company does not have work or revenue now. They applied for unemployment benefits, but if they get the PPP loan, do they need to cancel unemployment and run payroll for themselves immediately? though they still don't have any work and may not have work for some time.
Right, and that comes to, the business decisions you need to make for yourself, and where you're going to derive the greatest benefit based on what your funding needs are. Because you can't really double dip, so to speak. So you're either employed or you're not employed. So if you want to go the unemployment route, that is definitely an option. But you can't go and get PPP funds to pay you for the same time period that you're trying to collect unemployment. So if that makes sense.
Another one says they just received $1,000 from SBA. How do they determine the loan amount? I don't know that we can let them know that, because obviously everybody's circumstances are different.
Yeah, I'm guessing that was the EIDL advance program, which was the up to 10,000, which was calculated as $1,000 per employee up to the $10,000 cap. So if they are self-employed or only had, then they would be eligible for the $1,000.
And the last question on the list, it says that they are a W-2 with their own restaurant, which is an S-Corp, but have stepped back from work to give some needy employees hours at this difficult time. I don't have hours to work myself and hence not paying myself. If I get a PPP loan, can I give hours on priority to employees till we are fully staffed? And once again, they're all paid from PPP funds. Can I pay the balance to myself to get the full forgiveness? So I guess they're trying to prioritize what they do with the money. They want to try to qualify for the grant, but at this point they're trying to earmark for their employees, which is pretty noble.
It is, and I think, in some regards, it turns out to be the math game, and you might want to go look at the sample calculations and run those numbers for your specific scenario, because there is a calculation for how you determine what your potential loan size would be. And then there's a separate calculation for how that forgiveness piece will work. So without having your specific data, I would recommend you maybe go back and look at those calculations and run through the numbers just to see what your scenario looks like. Because remember, at least for forgiveness, at least 75% of those loan proceeds need to go towards payroll costs. Now, which employee and stuff is not necessarily designated. It's looking at, the amounts and looking at at least 75% of that loan amount going towards payroll costs. So one way is just to sit down and just do some simple calculations to see what that means with your specific numbers.
Good. Yeah, and thank you both for being so open and willing to answer questions, especially with the changing environment. Just even today, as of this morning, just the landscape changing very dramatically with the closing of the two programs that we were getting ready to talk about. It just really kind of typifies the environment that we're looking at. One of the things I wanted to say as we begin to wrap up is that if there is a question that you have that was not answered or you need additional information, please reach out to the Silicon Valley Small Business Development Center. There are people answering the phones, and we do give calls back, and we can get you those answers. And help you find those answers in addition to other resources. But before, as we start to wrap up, I'd just like to give a second to each of you, starting with Julie, for any closing comments.
So I just want to say thank you again to City of Cupertino and the Chamber, and to our SBDC colleagues for your time today, and then for this forum. For the small businesses out there, as one of my colleagues, I think, said it best, this is in this really challenging time for your business. You don't have to do this all by yourself. Reach out to the resources that are there to help you. We want to try to help you and support you as best we are able. Tap into these free business advisors. Please take advantage of these resources to help you.
Dennis?
You said it so well. The reality is we are dealing with a disaster of such proportion that none of us in our lifetime has experienced. We do have to count our blessings for those that are living and working in Cupertino and in the Bay Area. It's a wonderful place to be in spite of the crises. And the best way to understand that is to understand the value of the relationships of the people around you, whether it's the relationships with your city council, with your chamber of commerce, with your neighbor next door. This is the time to be testing our safety networks that really are the essence of our community. Bottom line this is an economic crisis, but it's also a health crisis. So for those of us that are healthy, we should certainly be thankful for that. Certainly staying in place has been significant in flattening the curve and making survival a stronger possibility than otherwise. When we keep thinking of others, I think everybody wins. The bottom line for all of us is we're here for you. We're here for each other.
And that's great. And that's one of the things that I think is one of the best messages of this. And if you're on the call and you know of even other business owners, oftentimes we try to figure it out on our own. And I know that I get caught in that bucket all the time where you just keep working on a problem and you don't try to look around to see if there's a resource or a partner that can help you get through the process more quickly. And so that's one of the biggest things that I'm hoping that we can do with this webinar series and with this call today is really show people that there are teams of people right here around you that can help. And it doesn't mean they have all the answers. And there's by no means any magic wand, but there is a lot of hope and there's a lot of partnerships and there is a path forward, however it's going to be. But we're going to get there better together. And that's why I couldn't be more grateful and more thankful, because I know that all of you have a lot of things going on and there's a lot of demands on your time and there's a lot of uncertainty ahead. But I just think that being able to come together like this is always a good first step. And one of the things we are planning to do is have another webinar just like this next week with different speakers of the same caliber and the same tip of the spear, and get an update at that point in time. But for today, really want to thank the City of Cupertino, the Chamber of Commerce, the other local community members that brought people to the webinar, but especially Julie, I know that you're so busy. Like I said, I see you on 2 to 3 webinars a day as you're bouncing all over the place. So I really appreciate you taking the time for our community to come out and help, and hoping that you can do that again as we go through this and need additional updates, because I think that hearing from you is absolutely amazing. And Dennis, I know that you're bouncing all over the place as well. So for both of you, really appreciate taking the time and really giving that as a gift to us so that we can figure out a path forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks so much. And on that, I do have to go to my next webinar. So
Please
thank
do.
you so much.
All right. Thank you all. And I guess that ends our webinar for today. So thank everyone for joining. And once again, we'll be back soon with updates.